The development of any country is a process of improving both hard power, such as economic strength and military power, and soft power, like values and cultural ideas.
At midnight, suddenly, the loudspeakers in the neighborhood started playing Xi Jinping's cultural thought.
At 12 a.m. on November 28th, loudspeakers in multiple neighborhoods across Yunnan, China, suddenly blared out the study online of Xi Jinping thought, playing for almost half an hour. Many residents were awakened from their sleep and complained. Residents in places like Zhaotong, Ruili, Mangshi, Lijiang, Qujing, and Mengzi reported being disturbed by the broadcasts around midnight. They took to social media to express frustration, saying things like, "Scary and disruptive. How can anyone sleep? What's happening? National broadcast at midnight?" One user commented on social media, "It's like we're back in the Cultural Revolution, playing the leader's quotes at 3 a.m. Another added, "It was the same during the Mao era. No one could sleep. Village officials would wake us up at 6 a.m. with loudspeakers, blaring Mao's quotes to get us to work in the fields and make steel." Some even speculated it was a test of wartime broadcasts. That morning, several local media departments in Yunnan responded, explaining that the midnight broadcast was a result of a directive from the provincial platform. A staff member from Dali Broadcasting said the emergency broadcast system runs from the province down to the county and village. Last night, the provincial platform sent out a unified directive. We are still investigating why it was issued, but all media units in the province are handling the issue. There's no special reason for this, and there's no need to panic. A staff member from the Xinjie Township government in Longyang District, Baoshan, explained that the emergency broadcast didn't just occur in Xinjie Township at midnight on the 28th, but across the entire district, city, and province. They said the emergency broadcast control permission is with the provincial authorities. We are still verifying the situation. The Yunnan Provincial Radio and Television Bureau emphasized that the system had not been hacked and added, "We're holding an emergency meeting and will issue an official announcement at the appropriate time." Later that afternoon, a staff member from the Yunnan Provincial Radio and Television Bureau told Hongxing News that the emergency broadcast platform is still in the testing phase. They explained that the broadcast mistake was caused by human error. Back in August, Yunnan Radio and Television had published an article on its official website stating that the provincial-level emergency broadcast platform had passed its initial inspection and testing for the 2024 construction project. Several Chinese news outlets reported on the incident on November 28th. Strangely, some of these outlets, including the paper and Shangyou News, quickly removed their reports about the incident. Meanwhile, topics related to the Yunnan midnight broadcast were also censored on Weibo. Just as people were speculating about what had happened, a more shocking piece of information emerged. A broadcast was released on the X platform, marking the time at 1:33 a.m. on November 28th, an hour after the Xi Jinping thought broadcast.
Residents of Yunnan, please close your windows and doors and don't go outside, and don't record or take photos. Martial law is in effect. Don't take pictures of military or armored vehicles. Anyone caught will be punished by a military tribunal. We are now in a state of emergency.
An online user who provided a video of the incident mentioned that the broadcast speakers were located just above their home, and they were unsure of what had happened. They wondered if the martial law announcement could mean there was a military coup in the making. Some online users speculated that the incident could be linked to rumors surrounding the Chinese defense minister's arrest. On November 26, the Financial Times reported that Defense Minister General Dong Jun was under investigation for corruption. The Chinese government did not deny the claim at the time. Notably, just after the Yunnan broadcast incident on November 28th, the Chinese authorities unusually and firmly denied the rumors about Dong Jun's investigation. Political commentator Jin Tao analyzed that General Dong Jun's career moving from the North Sea Fleet to the East Sea Fleet and later to the Southern Theater Command and the Navy had earned him a powerful network of allies within the military. These allies, who owed their rise to him, might not just stand by and watch if their benefactor was targeted by the anti-corruption campaign. If the rumors of a military coup in Kunming, Yunnan, on the morning of November 28th were true, it could suggest that Dong Jun's allies were behind an attempted coup. This might also explain why the Chinese government suddenly denied the investigation into him, possibly trying to contain any fallout. Another theory circulating was that the Yunnan broadcast might have something to do with Bo Guagua, the son of former Chinese official Bo Xilai. Bo Xilai, who was once a top figure in the Chinese government and a rival of Xi Jinping, was arrested on charges of corruption years ago. His wife, Gu Kailai, was also involved in criminal activities that have not been fully disclosed by the authorities, and Bo Xilai is currently serving a prison sentence. Recently, Bo Guagua made headlines when he married the granddaughter of a Taiwanese hospital founder. On the morning of November 27th, at a press conference held by China's Taiwan Affairs Office, spokesperson Chen Binhua responded to questions about Bo Guagua's marriage, saying, "If it's a cross-strait marriage, I wish you happiness, but we do not comment on this and we oppose maliciously hyping it." Political commentator Li Dayu noted that the fact that the spokesperson even said, "I wish you happiness," was remarkable, given the strained relationship between Xi Jinping and Bo Xilai. Xi had kept Bo alive and imprisoned rather than executing him, possibly due to Bo's connections in the so-called red aristocracy. Had Xi still been in full control, Li argued, this marriage and the attention surrounding it would never have been allowed to happen. Li Dayu also pointed out that Bo Guagua's trip to Taiwan was surrounded by rumors that he entered using a British passport. However, Taiwan confirmed that he used a Chinese passport and completed the necessary paperwork for a cross-strait marriage. Li said that if someone wanted to return to China or seize power, they would avoid getting foreign citizenship. It could be used against them by their enemies. This is why Bo Guagua has never taken foreign nationality. The Bo family has had a long and complicated relationship with the 14th Group Army of the Yunnan military region. Before Bo Xilai's arrest, he had reportedly gone to Yunnan to feed the birds, which is believed to have been an attempt to incite a rebellion among the 14th Army's generals and challenge Xi Jinping for power, though it ended in failure. Recently, many top officials like the Chinese Navy commander and the defense minister have been removed. Now, with reports of an emergency broadcast and even martial law, many are starting to wonder if Xi Jinping could be at risk of being overthrown. The Chinese government's loudspeakers rarely serve their intended purpose, such as warning the public during national disasters like earthquakes or floods. The true function of these loudspeakers seems to be political. In many cases of severe flooding, the loudspeakers are only used to make belated announcements once the waters have already reached people's doorsteps, giving the appearance of action while failing to prevent disaster. In fact, some believe these floods are exacerbated by the government deliberately releasing water from dams. Historically, the primary use of loudspeakers in China has been to indoctrinate the population, a tool for brainwashing that reached its peak during the Cultural Revolution. The loudspeakers were one of the most iconic items of the time, playing non-stop revolutionary songs, praises of Mao Zedong, and Communist Party propaganda. Particularly in rural areas, the loudspeakers became a part of many people's childhood memories. People had no choice but to listen to the broadcasts all day because they couldn't be turned off. Some young people who tried to dismantle the speakers were warned they would face imprisonment if they did so. In 2019, China's Xinhua News reported on a loudspeaker project to be launched in Shijiazhuang, using a combination of internet and loudspeakers to broadcast 3 times a day. This program, which promotes Communist Party policies and ideology, has already been rolled out in over 200 cities and counties across China, including 12 provinces such as Shandong, Heilongjiang, and Henan. Despite nearly every Chinese person having a smartphone, these loudspeakers are reappearing in rural areas, raising questions about whether the Communist Party is targeting elderly people who cannot use smartphones or read. This move has drawn comparisons to Nazi Germany, where Joseph Goebbels used radios to spread propaganda to every household. But in China today, loudspeakers are even more invasive, as people are forced to listen to broadcasts whether they want to or not. In recent years, these loudspeakers have been widespread in rural areas again. For example, in Yongcheng, Henan province, the local party's radio station starts broadcasting every morning at 7 a.m., accompanied by the CCP song, "Without the Communist Party, there would be no new China." The station's mission is to spread the prepackaged indoctrination content that urges the masses to love the party, be grateful to the party, and follow the party. These loudspeakers are also used to encourage people to report religious groups or other undesirables. For instance, villagers are incentivized with rewards, 500 yuan for reporting an individual and 1,000 yuan for reporting a meeting point. Historian Zhang Lifan of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences remarked that the return of loudspeakers signifies Chinese government's desire to impose its will on the people, regardless of whether they wish to hear it or not. This technique of mass indoctrination dates back to the 1950s during the Korean War, when the Chinese used propaganda to brainwash American prisoners of war. After being subjected to Chinese re-education, many of the captured soldiers became pro-communist and anti-American. This is where the term brainwashing originated, translated from the Chinese phrase 洗脑, which was later introduced to the West. The US was alarmed, and even the CIA began conducting experiments on mind control, fearing that the Chinese had developed a secret weapon to manipulate thoughts and behavior. In the end, it was revealed that there was no secret weapon. Brainwashing is simpler than that. It's about using violence, threats, and high-intensity ideological indoctrination in a closed environment, which the CCP refers to as thought reform. Brainwashing is not an easy task, which is why it requires repeated efforts, like a long-term treatment process. The basic principle of brainwashing is based on Pavlov's theory of conditioned reflexes. The goal is to create a physical fear, followed by psychological dependency, and then use repeated brainwashing until individuals become obedient tools that listen to the CCP. After decades of such efforts, the results of this brainwashing are finally visible today, with multiple generations being shaped by it. The CCP's brainwashing is no longer limited to just political study and thought reform. As the CCP itself puts it, it's a comprehensive, systemic project aimed at controlling people's thoughts. The effects of this brainwashing can be seen in several aspects of Chinese society. 1. Acceptance of CCP rule as a fact. Even though the CCP may not be perfect, there is no alternative. Without the CCP, China would descend into chaos. 2. Empathy for the CCP. People might think, if I were in the CCP's position, I would do the same thing. So it's not the CCP's fault, but rather the fault of those who are being persecuted. 3. Conflating the CCP with China. Criticizing the CCP is seen as criticizing or insulting China itself. Many Chinese people lash out at those who speak up for human rights in China, accusing them of being anti-China. 4. Self-censorship. Even after leaving China, many people continue to block sensitive information from their minds. They refuse to believe or acknowledge the truth about things hidden by the CCP, thinking it must all be lies. 5. Look how great our country is. The economic development achieved by the hard work of the people is credited entirely to the party. People are filled with a mixture of pride and arrogance, blindly waving the flag for the CCP. 6. Fighting so-called enemies. The CCP often creates domestic and international enemies using lies, and the public is easily stirred up to hate and boycott these enemies, even when the accusations are unfounded. 7. Belief in the CCP's systemic advantages. People are taught that autocracy can concentrate power to accomplish great things, while democratic systems with party alternation can't achieve anything significant. Many are convinced that the decline of the West is inevitable and that the future belongs to China. 8. Excusing CCP's wrongdoings. People who have not personally experienced the negative side of the CCP tend to deny or minimize its abuses. If they haven't been targeted by the party, they find it hard to believe that the CCP could do anything bad. Criticizing the CCP is often seen as criticizing themselves, and no matter how much evidence there is, they will defend the party. These are just a few of the many symptoms of brainwashing. There are many more. The CCP treats brainwashing and spreading lies as a top priority, and its highest propaganda institution is the Central Propaganda Department. Other departments like the Ministry of Culture, the Ministry of Education, and the Ministry of Justice, which are officially on the same level as the Propaganda Department, are actually subordinate to it when it comes to important decisions and policies. The Chinese Communist Party not only controls the minds of its citizens domestically through its systemic brainwashing efforts, but it also extends its influence internationally through its United Front Work Department, also known as the UFWD. The UFWD oversees Chinese diplomatic missions, such as embassies and consulates around the world, and in some cases, it has more power than the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. When there are conflicts between the UFWD and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on diplomatic matters, the UFWD often prevails, indicating its significant influence. While the CCP has been deeply engaged in brainwashing its domestic population, it has also worked tirelessly to block any access to the truth. Before 1978, there was a crime called listening to enemy broadcasts, which could even lead to death penalty. The term enemy broadcasts came out of the Cultural Revolution, referring to Chinese citizens who used shortwave radios to listen to foreign broadcasts, particularly Chinese language programs from Taiwan or the US. This included well-known stations like Voice of America and Free China Radio. The CCP considered anyone who was caught listening to such broadcasts as committing a criminal act or listening to enemy broadcasts. At that time, the CCP's Xinhua News Agency published articles one after another saying, "There are many people listening to Voice of America everywhere, including various major cities." At the time, radios, especially shortwave receivers, were considered valuable household items. Many people were afraid to listen to enemy broadcasts because of the risks involved. The living conditions were poor, and even those who wanted to listen often didn't have the means to do so without fear of being caught by neighbors who might report them. If someone was caught, their radios would be confiscated, and they could lose their jobs, face imprisonment, or even be executed. Despite the dangers, there were still Chinese people who want to learn about the outside world or understand their own country's issues. Many of these people, in an environment of high pressure and fear, became awakened by listening to so-called enemy broadcasts. To block these stations, the CCP encouraged citizens to report each other and used intimidation tactics. In large cities like Beijing and Shanghai, the CCP set up jamming stations to make it difficult to listen to Voice of America and similar stations. The broadcasts were often drowned out by static and noise. However, in more remote regions such as Heilongjiang, Ningxia, Yunnan, and Tibet, the CCP had fewer resources to set up jamming stations, so in these areas, enemy broadcasts could be received clearly. Fast forward to the Internet age, and a similar crime has emerged, the crime of crossing the Great Wall or VPN crime. This refers to the act of bypassing the CCP's Internet censorship to access uncensored information. On November 25th, a U.S. senator introduced a major bill that aims to counter the CCP's censorship. One of the bill's sponsors, Senator Ben Cardin from Maryland, wrote an article for Newsweek stating, "China's people deserve the truth, not censorship." He pointed to a tragic incident on November 11th when a 62-year-old man drove his car into a crowd outside a sports arena in Zhuhai, resulting in 35 fatalities and 43 people injured. This was the deadliest mass tragedy in China in over a decade. While this tragedy made headlines in the West, many Chinese citizens were likely unaware of it due to the CCP's extensive censorship system. Even foreign news agencies in China were threatened by Beijing. A reporter from the BBC was physically attacked while covering the incident. Senator Cardin emphasized that while American politicians focused on China's global ambitions, the U.S.-China economic competition, and China's aggressive actions on the world stage, which challenged the global order that the U.S. and its allies have followed since World War II, they often overlook a crucial element: the Chinese people. U.S. Senators Ben Cardin and Dan Sullivan have introduced a bipartisan bill called the Informing a Nation with Free, Open, and Reliable Media Act, also known as the Inform Act. It aims at helping Chinese citizens bypass internet censorship and access independent, truthful information. The bill seeks to enhance U.S. government efforts, particularly through the U.S. State Department and the U.S. Agency for Global Media, to provide uncensored content to Chinese citizens. It focuses on developing technology to circumvent China's strict internet censorship, providing secure tools for content sharing, and supporting Chinese language news and media. The bill also empowers citizen journalism and independent media outlets to report on events inside China. Cardin emphasized that, while the risks are higher than ever, all evidence suggests that we have an unprecedented opportunity for engagement. He also explained that one of the key goals of the bill is to spark a dialogue in Congress. The focus is on how the U.S. can better support the rights and freedoms of the people living under harsh censorship and oppression in China. He stressed that the Chinese people are not the enemy, but members of the international community who deserve the same rights to freedom and access to truth as people in other countries. Republican Senator Dan Sullivan of Alaska, who co-sponsored the Inform Act with Cardin, said in a statement that one of Xi Jinping's greatest weaknesses is that he is afraid of his own people. Sullivan said, "This legislation lays out a way to exploit the CCP and Xi's greatest weakness and make the most of our greatest strategic advantage, our commitment to liberty. I will continue to work in the next Congress and with the Trump administration to make it a reality." The two parties in the United States have rarely reached consensus on an important decision. That is, what the CCP fears the most is that the people know the truth, which is the most fatal for the CCP. The loudspeakers in China's main squares may soon play the news of the fall of the CCP.